can't think of a better word to use for Ubisoft right now than disarray. If you look at its stock price, it's plummeted to new lows. And then beyond that, leadership has been squandering things like dealing with the toxic workplace, with their inability to address the environment of harassment, abuse, misconduct, and discrimination in a proper and full way. Beyond that, it's just been a streak of delays, cancellations, and cost-cutting measures that has left many people, both members of the community and employees alike, just disillusioned and pessimistic about the future of this company. Speaking of employees, there was a point where Ubisoft put the onus of making the company succeed and the responsibility of leadership's failure on employees by telling them that the ball is in your court to make Ubisoft successful after leadership led the ship astray, which pissed off a lot of employees, and it led to CEO Yves Guillemot having to apologize to employees and try to explain what he meant, but it didn't improve anything. And then zooming into the troubled projects or canceled projects, we've got games like Prince of Persia Sands of Time Remake, which not only looked pretty rough last time we saw it, we don't even know what the state of the game is, as it's gotten delayed over and over again, with at one point pre-orders getting canceled across the board. So nobody really knows what's going on with this project. Definitely seems to be in some kind of trouble or development hell. Beyond Good and Evil 2 is infamous for how long ago it was announced, and yet as of November of 2022 it's still in early development, and it actually broke Duke Nukem's record for longest game in development, and it's still nowhere close to launching. You've got games like Project Q, which they announced back in April of 2022, a team battle arena letting players truly own the experience, that was confirmed to have been canceled after Insider Gaming broke the story. As far as cancellations are concerned, we're looking at a situation where Ubisoft has canceled at least 7 games in the last 6 months as of January of 2023, which is utterly and completely insane. Just the level of mismanagement involved to cancel that many projects in that short amount of time. But among the most talked about troubled Ubisoft project that is currently in development hell is Skull and Bones, which was announced to be delayed alongside the cancellation of 3 major unannounced games. Skull and Bones is a game that we have seen in action through gameplay footage, and it just does not look like anything compelling. They tried to make a naval combat video game out of Assassin's Creed Black Flag's naval combat, but you might as well play Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which has the naval combat and also ground combat and actually makes you feel like a pirate. There's nothing about the Skull and Bones gameplay we've seen that looks inspired, and sure, the game is taking its time, too much time, and it keeps getting delayed time and again, but there comes a point where delays don't indicate a development studio that just needs to polish up a great concept and a potentially great game. It just indicates a troubled project that they just have to patch together and tape together and get it out. And with this game in particular, Skull and Bones, it has been in development for so long. It was called an 8-year-long nightmare back in July of 2021. It's 2023 now, so we're looking at a decade-long nightmare. And this is one of those projects that Ubisoft shot itself in the foot with because they cannot cancel this one. They made a deal with the Singapore government. I believe they got some funding from them or something, and that forces them to finish this game and ship it out there, and there's no backing out, as much as they would have likely loved to cancel this project and canned it if it were an option. Now, with how many times this game got delayed, a whopping 6 times, or more specifically, the delay was to next fiscal year, which runs from April 2023 to March 2024. One might assume that all this extra time might potentially allow them to ultimately release a decent enough game, but based on information that Insider Gaming received from insider sources, having spoken to 10 playtesters of Skull and Bones this week as of the publishing of this article, January 29th, 2023, this is a game that's struggling to garner the interest and the enthusiasm of playtesters. The headline itself reads, Skull and Bones still struggles to resonate with playtesters, but it should release anyway. And sure, they are playing an incomplete build, but the foundations of the game are there. It reads right here that these playtesters played up to 6 hours of the game. Now, among these playtesters, there were very few who were overall satisfied with this title. 1 or 2 comments were satisfied with the game, but the overall feeling with those who play the game is that it's still nothing special. Not a good ratio of people who are enjoying what they playtested. Now, Ubisoft's Yves Guillemot chalked up the reason for Skull and Bones getting delayed yet again to allowing the game to have a much more polished and balanced experience to build awareness, whilst promising that players will be positively surprised by its evolution, so oversold Yves Guillemot, but what playtesters are saying is that there's nothing about the evolution of this game that has compelled them. According to insider gaming sources, players are not positively surprised by its evolution at all. It's seemingly no more compelling than the last gameplay video that we saw, which showed pretty, honestly, monotonous looking gameplay that feels like it's just not going to have enough substance to carry it across a live service experience, which I believe this game is meant to be. And it's worth noting that the landscape of live services is pretty rough right now. I recently made a video titled "Live Services Are Dying by the Dozen," where I highlight the dozen or so live services that died within the time frame of just a few weeks. And if you just go back a year, that number is significantly higher. We're getting to a point now where the live service landscape is so oversaturated, with there not being enough players with enough time to partake in all of these live services that demand a level of grind that basically make them part-time, at times full-time jobs, that unless your live service really stands out from the pack, it is essentially doomed to fail. People are going to stick to what they know, the live services that are already established, and are actually doing a good job with content releases and consistent quality and whatnot. For Skull and Bones to be aiming to release in this current landscape, it's basically suicide for this game, in my opinion. I don't think this game is going to really live very long unless there's something really shockingly surprising about its substance and its gameplay elements that will keep people engaged for the long term. Like, look, I'm not ruling out the possibility that Skull and Bones might surprise in terms of how many people it ends up resonating with, but based on what I'm seeing currently, based on the gameplay that we have seen, based on what these playtesters are saying, based on the general sentiment, there's just not a whole lot of enthusiasm for this game. And it's discouraging to hear that the so-called evolution that Yves Guillemot promised for Skull and Bones since we last saw it is not really panning out, as playtesters are reporting that there was no surprising evolution. Some playtesters are so unenthused by this game that they didn't even really bother checking the game out, with Insider Gaming reporting that we have seen comments on my Twitter status, Tom Henderson's Twitter status, from invitees this week that they will not even be trying the recent playtest despite being invited because they have already ruled this game out. Two developers and secondhand accounts of the progress of the game say that they wouldn't be surprised if the game didn't release until the second half of 2023 at the earliest, due to the game still being incomplete. Despite this sixth delay, the game's in a state where releasing this game 10 months from now would still be pushing it. It is optimistic for this game to come out in late 2023 because of just how much is still incomplete or how much there's still to fix. Even after all this time, after essentially a decade of development, of nightmarish development. One of the things that playtesters were complaining about is that there is no land combat or land traversal or gameplay to spruce up this pirate experience. Because this game is just strictly naval combat, Skull and Bones is meant to satisfy your pirate fantasies by allowing you to captain your own ship and engage in battles, but many feel as though there has to be some interactivity and connectivity between the land and the sea to really flesh everything out. But when a playtester asked the developer about that, it was recently reported that devs responded to playtester concerns about the lack of combat on land because they're too far deep into the game to do anything severe. The game's simply too far into development for them to be able to make major changes or overhauls or additions. They just have to finish what's already set in place. But what's set in place is still broken enough and unfinished enough, and they're struggling with it enough that we're still going to have to wait at least, a handful of months. And even then, a more likely scenario is that this game is actually going to come out sometime in early 2024. And this is based on accounts from developers working on this game who must be utterly exhausted and deflated by this project. And while the technical issue surrounding the current state of the game is far from the main reason for why this game is not resonating with playtesters, it doesn't help that what playtesters played through was infested with bugs and glitches. Playtesters have reported to Insider Gaming that the game is still plagued with game-breaking bugs. We're not talking about little things like some funny visual glitch. These are game-breaking stuff that are still in the game, despite the fact that this game was originally supposed to come out a month from now. And the fact that the game is still very rough around the edges is further indicated by the fact that Ubisoft recently delayed a media hands-on preview event that was scheduled for the first week of February. Beyond the contents of this Insider Gaming article, another source of information comes via Reddit, specifically the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit, where somebody who claimed to have played 6 hours of Skull and Bones closed beta via the playtesting period shared their impressions on the game, and it's not too far off from what Insider Gaming conveyed, with the only difference being that as far as this player is concerned, they actually thought they were playing a pretty polished feeling game, very little in the way of bugs or missing assets. But that aside, the game that they played is very much indicative of a hollow-feeling naval combat experience. And right here, I've highlighted some of the most important bits in regards to his impressions. This Reddit user said that every time you want to craft or turn in a mission, you have to go to a base on land, which involves a long loading screen. Starting conversations to hand in quests also needs a loading screen, so you spend 1 to 2 minutes to disembark, talk, and then get back on your ship, which does not sound ideal and seems really tedious. There is no land combat, so I'm not even sure why they have land gameplay other than to help sell cosmetics, since you never see your character on the ship. And yes, this is going to be a microtransactions infested game because it is a live service. It is stated down here there's already a battle pass and premium currency in the game because the $60 price tag apparently isn't enough. Very few people are going to pay for cosmetics in a game where you hardly see your character, but the fact that that's on top of them charging full price for this game that does not seem to be worth that price tag is hilarious in a really grim way. It is further emphasized here that this game is basically fetch quest galore. It looks like it'll be at least 20 to 25 hours before you get a ship the size of the one in Black Flag. And then when it comes to ship combat, it was described as it and the steering itself not being much more complicated than Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Not a whole lot of extrapolation to that gameplay. You unlock ships that seem more interesting, but are you willing to sink maybe 30 to 50 hours into this game before it gets good? Hell no. And then that's essentially what this game is. Go do fetch quests again and again so you can slowly get better gear and eventually hope the game gets fun. And then here's the most scathing quote. In 6 hours, I didn't have one moment that felt genuinely fun. And then the TLDR says everything it needs to say. Extremely grindy version of Black Flag with few innovations, fetch quests, and microtransactions infested. Yay. I really feel for the devs who are assigned to this game. I imagine that many feel like they're working on a project that is doomed to fail. Imagine working on something that you know isn't going to resonate with people. You know its fate is sealed. Again, I can't predict the future. I don't know if this game will end up surprising and actually end up doing decently enough. But as of right now, this is looking like it's among the most disastrous development cycles for a launch AAA game, like standing up there among the likes of Anthem and whatnot. Except the concept of Anthem at least was interesting. The execution was just completely botched. With this game, even the concept seems really flawed. The fact that they're making a naval combat game that wants to capture the pirate experience, but doesn't allow you to do a lot of the things that pirates would do both on land and sea. And again, the gameplay that was shown just doesn't indicate a depth and substance of gameplay that will make this sustainable for the long term as a live service. The feeling I get from the gameplay that I've seen is that it's one of those games where you play a couple matches and you've kind of seen everything. I mean, I'm sure there is a layered progression system here that is more in depth than what you'd see in something like Assassin's Creed Black Flag, where the naval combat is almost like a side activity, a mini game that is a core part of the experience, but is not necessarily the main focus of the game. It's an aspect of the game. This is the entire game that is the naval combat. And while a naval combat video game is cool in concept, the execution matters, and it just doesn't really feel like it's pushing the boundaries of what this kind of gameplay could achieve with more thought and a better vision put into it. I suppose only time will tell how this game will turn out, but man, talk about a game that has an incredibly steep hill to climb, and it's a hill that I think is too much for this game to surmount, based on the information we currently have, at least. What this game currently feels like is sunk cost fallacy that they're unable to back out of because of a deal that they made with the Singapore government. This is a project that is obligated to be released and a project that cannot quit while it's ahead. Or at least that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Skull and Bones. Do you think there is hope for this game to be decent to good enough to compel gamers, or do you think it is doomed to fail? There's nothing about this game that in any way, shape, or form makes me personally optimistic that it'll succeed, but I mean, it'd be nice if they changed my mind or if I was wrong about that. I just personally don't foresee that happening. But share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.